Welcome everybody to the public meeting of Joint Public Protection Committee. My name is Thomas McCann. I will be chairing the meeting this evening. We have members from West Berkshire here with us this evening, Bracknell, and of course we have got Lou from Wokingham, which you're welcome this evening. Just as a gentle reminder that fortunately everyone is here for this evening, but only members present can actually vote. So in the future, if you're online, unfortunately we can't have you participate in that part, but certainly can have you participating in any discussions and indeed before and or after meetings. So at this point, I would like to ask for apologies, which I don't think there should be any.
We do have apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Shreese Welch and Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Excellent, thank you for that correction. We'll swiftly move on to the minutes. I take it members have had the chance to read the minutes, and if members are happy that I would propose that we accept the minutes as accurate. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jeffries to second.
All those in favour? Oh, sorry, officers do this, don't they?
Yeah, so that's for the ordinary minutes from the 9th of June. Members in favour of the accepting them as correct? Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming that applies to the special minutes. There's two sets of minutes in there from the same date, so I'll take that as correct. Yeah, that's correct as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Moving on to outstanding actions from the previous minutes and agenda. Is there any outstanding actions?
I understand they've been actioned. Yeah, they're up to date.
Thank you for that. Then there's no further outstanding actions. We're moving quite swiftly on here this evening, which is great. Declarations of interest.
Not been advised of any in advance, but are there any from the floor? No.
Again, thank you for that. There's no declarations of interest. Item 5, to note that there's no public questions. Just to clarify and update ourselves, is that still the case?
Exactly so, Chairman. Yeah, no questions.
Wonderful. This may be the shortest JPPC committee in the history of West Berkshire. Until we, and I've jinxed it. I've jinxed it. Sorry. Okay, I take that statement back. Okay, well, thank you. Now moving on to the meat of this evening's meeting is the forward plan. I have, before I ask the officers to present that forward plan, I'd like to bring forward a suggestion to members. Well, it's difficult to be involved in a forward plan when you get presented it in October for the next 18 months or so. I would feel that members would like some more input so in the future. So what I would invite members to do, and the officers will facilitate this, I'm sure, is if you have as individual members from your particular constituencies and councils, if you would like something put into the forward plan, please make this information available, because you will have specific things in your area that don't always immediately spring to mind, because we're from a slightly different patch as such. So I would invite members to review the forward plan, come back with anything that they feel that they want to put in so that they have some ownership of the forward plan. Perhaps by December, that would enough time for members to come up with any of the suggestions, feedback that into the process, so we can start zipping members' involvement into that projection. 90% of the forward plan is predetermined anyway, but that doesn't preclude members having input that reflect their particular needs in a particular part of our duties. At that point, I invite officers to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So, with your consent, this will be a bit of a joint effort, but I'll try not to undermine your prediction of it being a short meeting. So I'll try and be concise if I can. So I'm just picking up on the Q1 report here. Oh, sorry. Are we?
Yeah.
Are we? Oh, in that case, I won't start with the Q1 report yet.
Thank you.
Chairman, just to say, obviously the forward plan, there is a skeleton that we work on, an annual cycle of reports. There's also policies that come back every 3 years, so those are fed into the process. But what I'll do after the meeting is I'll circulate the Word version of the document, and then if anybody has anything that they'd like to add, and I know you've said December, but at any point, if any members have anything that they'd like to have changed, obviously that's always within their gift to speak with us. That's no problem at all.
Thank you for that. Because although I'm new to this particular role, I do value members' input and have done. I think because as an owner, we have to own what we're doing, and the needs of each local authority have to be zipped into what we want, as much as is reasonable. So I welcome that reminder from the officer that please do. And if you have something you'd like to bring forward, then please bring it forward as soon as you can. So thank you. So just for clarification, if anybody's watching this, we're just going to note this and move on to item 7. Thank you.
Chairman, can I just check whether you're have you suspended standing orders yet?
We haven't. That's which I should have brought to your attention in your introduction. But yeah, for Councillor Timlin, we need a proposal to suspending standing orders to allow us to ask questions on.
So opposed.
And a seconder?
I'm gladly second.
Yeah. So those in favour? Yeah. Thank you. That's for the meeting. Thank you.
My apologies for missing that one.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll try again at the right time now. So basically, this report will be familiar to anybody that's been to a previous meeting of the committee. Well, not this actual report, but this type of report. So just the background to this is that the committee is required to keep abreast of the delivery provided by the service on behalf of the councils, but also basically to monitor performance and financial management within the service. So if I may, I'll start with some of the general parts of the report, then I may bring colleagues in, if that's okay with your consent, Chairman, to deal with some of the detail in their own areas. So if I could just start with section 5 on finance. Now, at this point, basically, the point where this was written, it said there was a pressure of arising around 90k within the service, arising for a shortfall in income and a pressure arising from a housing matter which has now been settled, and additionality that's come from kennelling costs. In addition to that, actually, the total pressure was closer in the end to 200,000. And the reason being, just to inform the committee, was that the budget that was proposed to the councils was proposed this time last year, so it was October 2024. At that time, a couple of assumptions were made. One of them was that the national insurance contributions would remain the same, because there was no indication at that point. Basically, there was going to be a change in employer national insurance. And the second point was that we had predicted a 2.5% cost of living rise in the salary budget. which subsequently transpired to be 3.2%. So when those things were factored in with the additional pressure that's already mentioned in 5.1 there, we ended up with a pressure within the service of around about £200,000. Now, clearly, we know from years of managing the joint service that by and large, we're expected to deal with those pressures in year. And that's exactly what we're intending to do. But I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the committee tonight, because what that will mean is holding open a number of posts and things like that, basically to deal with the pressure in year. When we get on to the next item, which covers next year's budget, we can talk about how those pressures translate into next year's budget. So that's where we are on finance. So at the moment, we have a big pressure, but we're expecting basically to manage it to zero come end of year. So just moving on to recruitment. Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
I think it's applicable to this year's finances because during the year we've had, I think, both the chairman and executive members write to government asking them to change the statutory, to actually review the statutory charges which haven't been changed since 2011. Have you had any feedback on that?
I'm not aware that we've had any feedback. I know that basically we've written to government, and when we get to the next item where I will be talking about the fact that we reached a point where our licensing pressure was around about £180,000. The very reason for that was that basically there were assumptions made each time the budget was set that effectively there was going to be some cost of living rise to the statutory fees, which of course never rose. As a result of that, basically to bring the budget back into balance, we had to cut a number of posts across the service, basically to eliminate that pressure on a sort of permanent basis. But what we're doing going forward, and I will explain when we come on to the next item, is for the time being we're not assuming any increase to any of the statutory fees. Basically until we get the budget back in balance. But yes, I'll pick that up on the next item, Councillor Allen. So moving on to recruitment, we have had some positive outcomes. So there is definitely something changed, I think, now. I think it's fair to say with the employment market. What we are finding is that posts that maybe 2 or 3 years ago we may have got no applicants or very, very few, we're now getting quite a lot of applicants. The result of that is that the pool that we're drawing on for certainly the non-fully professional posts basically is quite big, and we've been fortunate basically in recruiting to a number of posts more recently. So we've taken on a new licensing enforcement officer, and we've also basically taken on a casual licensing enforcement officer to help us catch up from where we had the vacancy. We've also taken on 2 grant-funded community officers. So these are grant funded from a couple of different sources. One of them is public health grant funding, and the second source is actually we've been fortunate in securing 3 years of funding from the Police and Crime Commissioner, which is funding that we've accessed for all 3 authorities, which has allowed us basically to bring in an officer for that period to do work around effectively fraud and supporting the victims of fraud, which is positive. A couple of investigators have come in, one of whom was already with us as a temp, and another one that joined us basically from Thames Valley Police. We also secured funding, I think I mentioned last time, which was valued at around about £370,000 over 4 years to support 2 level 6 trainees within the service. I'm glad to say that we've had a very, very strong field for those posts, and we've recruited 2 trainees, and they've now started on the 15th of September, and they start their apprenticeships in the next couple of weeks. A new case officer, basically case management officer within the service, and two trainees and as enforcement officers. We have a number of posts vacant. You can see some of those are set out where we have tried to recruit, but they are difficult to recruit to. What I am pleased to say is that the 0.6 licensing application officer, we did actually have a very strong field for that post. And in fact, basically, we found ourselves with another 1 FTE vacancy in the applications team. I'm pleased to report that we've actually recruited 2.8 FTE posts basically to the team. So the team is back up at full strength, with the exception of the fact that the team leader for applications is leaving. And then there are a number of other posts that are identified at 6.3 as being vacant, and added to those now. The investigation team manager has retired recently. Basically, he left us after a number of years' service. And as I say, basically, we also, with the licensing applications team leader has also indicated that they're leaving, they've resigned basically. But the good news is that we've managed to basically put some interim arrangements in place, so there will be continuity within the team. And that's been helped by the fact that we had the casual licensing officer. So training and development, basically we have 2 members of staff that are just completing their MSc. So they've completed the MSc programme in environmental health. They are just completing the final stages of the evaluation there and going onto their portfolios, and they should qualify as environmental health officers in 12 months' time. As a result of those 2 coming out of the programme, we've now basically taken 2 more into that programme. So that will give us a steady stream of officers based on the fact that we know the profile of the service going forward, and we know that over in the next 2 or 3 years, basically there will be more officers required through natural loss, through retirements, etc. So I won't say too much more about that element of it. Just to say that there are a couple of qualifications that are really worth mentioning. The level 6, the trainee regulatory services officer that we originally brought in at level 4 basically has qualified with distinction his level 5 food premise inspection qualification. So he will be able to do food inspections in due course, and also that the case management officer that I referred to earlier on now has qualified fully and is accredited for litigation and advocacy. So just moving on very quickly to IT. So the new contract for the IT system has been signed now basically, and that's in place. We've had a number of discussions with Councillor McCann, and we are looking to come forward to the next meeting, possibly, hopefully, March actually, with a full AI and digital strategy for the service. We have started basically embracing some of that, and I could just give you a couple of updates on that. So we are using it for writing website content at the moment. Basically, which and it's proved very useful, and also assisting with the development of reports and news articles. But more recently, we are just going through a trial period with our legal database supply. So this is the law, effectively the online law database that we use, where they have developed an AI system which will help basically provide some capacity and resource into the work that we do around investigations, advice for businesses, and also the development, again, of website data and the researching of cases and preparation for cases. So the early indications that product looks pretty good. We did use some work around, interesting enough, the one bit that you would have thought had been fairly straightforward was basically effectively transcribing, the PACE interviews, the Police and Criminal Evidence interviews into transcribed written accounts. But in fact, actually, that didn't turn out that successful, interesting enough. I don't know whether we maybe want to try another package, but it took longer to correct than it would have done to type it. So, and as you know, basically, a lot of this stuff is absolutely excellent as a tool, but it's not foolproof. So basically, there is still work needs to be done, obviously, to check that. But certainly the areas that we are using it for are paying off well, and we'll come back, Councillor McCann, with that full strategy that you've asked for.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this comes under ICT or a bit later, but the analytics on the website, I believe that's in section 9. Would that be addressed then?
So because the system was new, the analytics for Q1 haven't been done, but they will appear in the Q2 report.
So it's actually been put into effect?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just, this is the last bit from me for now, I'll just be very, very quick, just to update on the peer review. What I can say is that the staffing elements of that, and members will remember the peer review have been taken forward. I met with a group of staff to look in more detail. We have implemented some changes as a result of that, and I'm intending to meet with them again in 2 weeks' time to go through the next stage of that. But the most significant element of the peer review recommendations was the new agreement arrangements. And I'm pleased to report to the committee that that is now on the forward plan of all three authorities. With all things being well, it should go to all three executives this month. Oh no, one in the first week in November in West Berkshire, but in Wokingham and Bracknell this month. And then subject to basically finalising the agreement, full council approval in the authorities, Wokingham will be readmitted by the time of the next meeting as full members of the committee. We're on top of that was the key recommendation of the peer review. So I'll stop there, and Moira, could I hand over to Moira to just pick up anything around the governance? Thank you.
So, Chairman, just in terms of the AI strategy, we're looking to bring things through that relate to AI, but also perhaps looking sort of slightly wider at other sort of technological solutions. So, whether that's kit, whether that's tablets for field staff, whether that's portable printers. I know that's not new technology, but so that when people are taking statements, they can print them off there and then, instead of having to then go back to the office, print something and take it forward. So we are looking at AI, but also wider technological use. And we've also got the West Berkshire's AI experts coming along to our next away day for the whole team to come along and do a presentation and talk to us about the art of what's possible, because a lot of us, I mean, if you don't know what's possible, you don't know what kind of things you're going to look to put into the strategy. So we are taking that forward. In terms of governance, this over Q1, we introduced the film policy in both Bracknell and West Berkshire. We've also introduced the RIPA policy, which is the Regulatory of Investigation Powers policy, and had subsequent training for all staff that do that type of work within the PPP. There's also management training across officers from West Berkshire and Bracknell, and that will be taking place, I think, next week it is. We have done a lot of consultation. We've done consultation on the taxi policy in West Berkshire. We've also done a consultation on the statement of licensing policy in Bracknell, and those will be coming back to meetings of licensing committee in October and November. During this time, we had 5 complaints, which might sound like quite a lot, but that's over 2,700 service requests that we've put in. So that's about 0.18% of the matters that we've dealt with. We've had complaints come back to us about. We now have online systems both in Bracknell and West Berkshire in terms of reporting on complaints. So that is helping matters in terms of keeping us on our toes, but also making sure that there's an electronic record so that other people can access it and it's not sort of squirreled away in somebody's folder somewhere. In terms of FOIs, the FOIs just continue to kind of just flood in. We had 133 in Q1. There's no let up in October this year either. And it took about 3 weeks of officer time. I mean, I leave it to members to decide whether or not that's a good use of officer time, but that's where we're at. And we've also dealt with 64 members' inquiries. Councillor Simon.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is helpful because I'm sure you've thought of this, but when you're thinking about digital and AI and tools, just that the amount of hours that go into those freedom of information requests, I didn't know if there's any kind of shared learning from anywhere else about anything you can do to automate that, use AI. I don't know. But
I think that's a great suggestion, and it is something obviously that we can look at. I do use it for when I'm sort of drafting responses sometimes, because it will give me the technical language around exemptions and things like that. So we do use it in part, and also in Bracknell from as of today, I believe they are starting to publish all of their FOI responses. So I guess from now on, if we've already done something, we can just direct people to a response that's already been published. So that may help as well.
Thank you. That was actually an the publishing the freedom of information. Is this something that we do in West Berkshire, or is it something that we could do as part of our? But I'm not suggesting it's a suggested action, but have we thought about doing that if it hasn't seen any problems?
I think that would be a corporate discussion, and we can have that.
Do members have any other questions on this item? Because I've got a couple of KPI things I'd like to ask if members are. And this is not to the officers particularly, this is to members. Your KPIs are indicated in the lines and colour coded. Does anybody feel like I feel that everybody's got something but nobody quite gets what they wanted out of it? If you get what I mean, because we've ended up with something like 10 KPIs when we've all got 5s, 4s and 5s and 6s of them, and there's an awful lot of NAs not applicables, and perhaps it's just I'm not familiar with this. Perhaps we could.
Chairman, just on the KPIs, I mean, the history of this is, I think it's fair to say that over the years we've added lots of KPIs and taken very few off the list. So the list just gets just gets longer, but they were reviewed back in this year, wasn't it?
March this year.
March
reviewed
this year.
before it.
Yeah, before you got on, and this was the list that effectively that we came up at that time. I think it's fair to say that these need to be kept constantly under review, because they do come in out of relevance. And I think the other thing is that obviously the world that we move in as a service, the world that you move as in a committee, basically things coming in and out of public policy importance and things like that. So, there are times. So at the moment, you might want to know, for example, how many knife sales there are, or how many vape sales there are, because they are public policy issues, fraud figures, all of that kind of stuff. Now, I think most of those things are actually in there, because but there will be other things, I think, that probably you may feel as a committee at some point that actually they've probably had their day in terms of reporting. So I think we would keep that under review. The only thing I was just going to add, Chairman, just going back to the main body of the report, I just wondered whether my colleagues, with your consent, Rosalind and George, who are online, basically where the report relates to things that they do, whether there was anything in particular that they wanted to just bring out, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yes.
So could I hand over? I don't know, George, do you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Sean. There were a couple of sections really that I wanted to highlight. I mean, they are in the main report, but certainly for section 10 regarding building safer communities, one of the issues that's become clear is to the service is that Kenling is creating both a budget pressure and a capacity issue. We are preparing a paper to explain all the issues in more detail, and what mitigation is being sought to alleviate those pressures, but it's unlikely that demand for spaces will reduce, and therefore this cost is unlikely to reduce with it. But as I say, we're going to put a paper together to go through some of the detail within that section. Do you want me to continue through to section 13, Sean?
Well, I think George, yeah, you might as well deal with all of your relevant bits.
Okay, thanks. So just again, and pointing then to section 13, officers have been involved in promotion and awareness. The officers involved in those areas of work, they've developed as a team. There's now 3 officers in that team. One is dedicated to public health, smoking cessation, and works directly with the public health teams. The other 2 are supporting scams work and supporting victims of crime. And they're also looking at delivering the assured care and support vetting service within the Wokingham area as well. The Community Alcohol Partnership is going from strength to strength. We've received awards for our efforts, and that's highlighted there in the report. But also what I wanted to mention, and I won't go into detail too much around the underage sales part, but we have had a sort of we are seeing increases in underage sales, which is kind of disappointing. So our plan is to increase our prevention, intelligence and enforcement package, which is going to look at highlighting heightening our communication strategy, and also bringing in a scheme to promote responsible retailing. As I say, I know this is Q1, but we're looking at that responsible retailing scheme to come in towards the end of the financial year, so by Christmas, with a launch around New Year. And then finally, just on the safe and healthy food chain, Q1 saw the application of our new food standards delivery model. So inspections are continuing at a pace, but with finite resources. But officers have also been scrutinising the data due to the changes in the model, and now it's becoming apparent that the number of inspections thought to be needed have also increased in year. Predictions are looking at around about an additional 500 or so inspections over the course of this year. That's not 500 separate premises, but that could be repeat inspections. But we'll continue to monitor and use a risk-based approach to tackle the premises that are most at risk or present the most risk to consumers. And as far as animal welfare and animal feed is concerned, these are all on target against our predictions that are contained in our feed and food plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Rosalind, I don't know whether you want to just add anything.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'll just talk to the areas that I cover, which are environmental quality, housing, and food and health and safety enforcement. These are in the paper under the priority areas of improved living environment, protection of the environment, safety in the workplace, and safe and healthy food chain. So of note for you in environmental quality, the annual status reports for air quality were submitted. They get submitted to DEFRA. They were submitted earlier this year, and we're just waiting for the feedback to come back from DEFRA on those papers. And we'll take that feedback back to the December JPPC for you to have a look at and discussion over. We've also started private water supply auditing of the single dwelling properties. We already do risk assessments and sampling where they are non-single dwelling. But what we've found is that we wanted to see whether these properties were supplying others or supplying in other ways, for example, through rented properties. And with the information that we've got so far, we've found 3 new suppliers detected in that route. So we'll keep working on that this year. And that team also look at planning consultations. That's a big part of their work in relation to noise control. They've been involved in some of the high profile cases, for example, the Kennett Centre in Newbury. It's come up recently. In terms of the food and health and safety enforcement, it covers food hygiene inspections, health and safety enforcement, including accident investigations in the workplace and infectious disease control. So in the first half of the year, we've been involved with a number of workplace accidents where basically we investigate to determine whether there's any formal court proceedings required. In addition, we're continuing to find food premises with hygiene issues such that immediate action are required and much follow-up is required to ensure that there's safe food. Part of what we do is we look at new food premises also, and we do inspections there. And what I found is that in the first part of the year, we've seen a 30% increase on the predicted new food businesses opening in the first half of the year. Now, all of these areas and more have affected the routine food inspection work that we carry out. And basically, we're working within a very tight budget and tight resources to get this back on track in the second half of the year. And also to make sure that we can get through as many of those new food businesses that need to be inspected. Mitigations that we've put in place include one officer returning to full-time work and requesting that restrictions on overtime are resolved. We also will have a drop in officers in November whenever the casuals cease working with us. That's 1.4 FTE. But again, we're keeping that under review in this next quarter, and we can bring information back to you at the next meeting. In In terms of housing, housing basically covers service requests from all tenures, private rented sector, registered social landlord. So there's the split is in the paper of what comes in service request wise. We do have a couple of unlicensed HMOs that we look for, and there's a couple of enforcement cases currently going through the courts with that. Now, the rest, another part of tonight's paper is the housing policy. So I'll probably talk more about housing in that and leave that to them. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Thank you, Chair. Just very, very quickly, and then just on the fraud and case management side. So this was picked up, I did notice today, by the local paper here in West Berkshire, the fraud figures, but the level of fraud that we're dealing with shows no sign of abating, basically. So we're still, for Q1, basically, there was an increase, basically. So we ran at 303,000 for Q1 this year. Basically, it does say this represents an increase on the I thought it was an increase of 250, but an increase on the 250 from last year. Of course, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. So this is the stuff that gets reported. But the team has been very successful. And in fact, we have had a couple of cases that are one of them, which is mentioned here. So we had one that resulted in quite a lot of publicity, where a trader pleaded guilty to multiple counts of unfair trading and supplying forged electrical and building control certificates. That was featured on both ITV and BBC programmes, basically, and radio, as well as the media. We just completed in a few weeks back, basically a 9-week trial at Reading Crown Court. And we are pleased to say that all, obviously, that we did secure a conviction against the person who operated the business for a number of counts of fraudulent trading and what's called use of a false instrument. So effectively a document that was purporting to be something else. So that case is due to be sentenced in November of this year. The previous case I talked about resulted in an immediate 12-month custodial sentence. And just last week, we did actually have a number of underage sales cases in court, and we did secure convictions, and there will be a press release going out on those in the next day or two.
Thank you for that. It was very, very helpful. Do members have any further questions?
Are we going back to 10.2? I had a question there under building safer communities.
Absolutely, if you wish to.
Yeah, it's 10.2. I'm concerned. I mean, I know we had a serious problem after COVID with abandoned dogs and such like, and I would assume that's gone down reasonably rapidly. But from the state of our dog bins, there's a lot of pets out there. What my major concern is that about dangerous dogs. And do we have many dangerous dog complaints? Because we don't have an officer in place, I believe.
So just on the officer in place, we are just about to go out to advert on that. We've been reviewing the job description. That's one of the reasons that we were doing that. George, I don't know whether you're probably best placed. I know that we do get quite a few dangerous or aggressive dog complaints coming to the service, don't we?
Yes, we do. And because it wasn't a dedicated animal warden function, we do have enforcement officers in the communities team that would essentially contact and work with police and or residents, depending on what the situation is. If it's dog on dog, or obviously if it's dog on a human, that would be a policing matter in any case. But as you say, Sean, we are recruiting to that post, so we can put in some more resource that's kind of dedicated to the animal world. And that includes not just the dog attacks, but dog fouling. But we don't things that we don't look at are the bins. But I mean, certainly look at dog fouling matters, and also we're looking to increase our inspection around animal boarding as well.
Can I just say, so what we're trying to achieve here, so you'll probably be aware that across the service, we have a number of animal welfare type functions. We have animal health and welfare on farm that we do across the 3 authorities. We have the animal warden service. We have the dangerous dogs type work, and also we have the licensing of animal establishments. What we are doing now is we're pulling all of those elements of work into one team effectively, so it becomes an animal welfare team. And then what we deal with then, hopefully over time, is to deal with some of the issues around sort of single point of failure type issues and everything else, basically by having specialists within the team, but basically people who are also able to step in other areas. So we've used the opportunity of the post becoming vacant to review basically the options around that.
Thank you, Chairman. That's comprehensive and reassuring.
Thank you. Yeah, just so again for future reference, if someone was to have a kennels within our boundaries, we would inspect them when complaints, or are we ragging them? What's your process should the issues be raised?
So kennels, for example, the licensing arrangement depends on the level of risk it presents, and the level of risk it presents is determined by the inspection. So anybody that's been on licensing Councillor Allen will know, who's been around probably through all of the changes for this. The system we now have is that a licence can be granted for 1, 2 or 3 years, depending on the star rating of the premise. What they do get is that all of the animal establishments that are licensed, whether that's day, boarding, kennels, catteries, riding establishments, basically they all get a visit when they apply for a licence, and then there is a mid-term inspection for every single one of those premises, basically. So you can see that it's to your benefit to have the highest rating, because that means effectively you're paying for 2 inspections in 3 years. If you basically have lower standards and end up with a 1-year licence, you effectively could be paying for as many as 6 inspections in 3 years, which starts to get expensive. So the incentive is there basically to have the highest standards and get the highest rating.
And if attention's been brought, or issues have been raised by neighbours, that would normally instigate an inspection.
Well, absolutely. So if there was complaints around welfare issues or animal health related issues, that would trigger basically a visit. We take all of those type of things, and we do get quite a lot of animal welfare complaints come in very seriously. And of course, the other type of complaint that we may get in relation to some of these premises are complaints around nuisance and, barking dogs and things like that. Not necessarily at boarding kennels, because they tend to be quite remote, but obviously from time to time we do get basically complaints about other types of animal establishments.
Thank you, that's very helpful. We have any other questions from any members? No. Yes.
Just sorry if I've not quite understood, but just had a question on section 12 about victim support for fraud. You mentioned that the fraud victim support officer retired, leaving a gap in service provision. Is the plan to backfill that, or has that been backfilled, or is that not in plan?
So it has, and that is part of the funding that we got now from the Police and Crime Commissioner. So as you'll know that for the PCC, basically fraud is one of the identified priorities. What happened was we bid for support through all 3 authorities. And what that meant was when the funding offer basically was approved, that was enough to appoint an officer to do just this type of work full time. So it's a really positive picture. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the strengths. If I would say there's lots of strengths of shared services, but that ability to access money through different sources and grant funding through different sources is definitely one of them, as we saw with, for example, the Department of Health trainees.
Perfect, thank you. I'd like to thank the officers who presented their here this evening for the reports. It was very clear, and thank you for the work that you do, which is very much appreciated. I think we're just to note this really, but before we move on, could I perhaps suggest to members, without running through the reviewing what the KPIs were for last year in March, and it was just recently done, but if officers have any obvious things that they think might need to just slip off the list, bearing in mind that things will be put onto the list in the future, members are more than open for that sort of flexibility.
So Chairman, just to say that what we've been speaking to our colleagues in the performance management team, and we will present, we've been looking, we said we'd bring all the KPIs back to this meeting, but we're looking at the presentation because as they are presented, they're probably, you know, people are not going to spend a lot of time looking at that. So we're going to try to sort of bring it back and have a sort of a 1-2 page summary of whatever members find interesting at that time. We'll continue to collect all the data though, because what may not be interesting or high profile now may become so in a period of time. So we can circulate the Excel spreadsheet outside of the meeting process, but look at the presentation as to what comes back to the December meeting.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for keeping members informed about the movable feast effectively. Moving on with members, I'm quite happy to item number 8. There's quite a bit here for members to run through. I'm not sure if I want to say this at the beginning or more at the end, but I think I'll just do that at the beginning. I first of all would like to thank the officers for the work that's gone on behind the scenes, because as members from other authorities do understand, there's enormous financial pressures placed on all of the parts of the council, and a lot of the unseen work is actually spreadsheets and adding up figures and taking figures away. So we really have, first of all, have to thank the officers for all the hard work put into this. But I'm going to bring up a point about ownership. As a brand new member to this council and a brand new member to this committee, I feel it's important that you, as members of other authorities, have ownership of your budget as well, and that you have input into the budget, and that we do not just in West Berkshire say, this is what we think, this is what it's going to be, and therefore vote for or against. So my suggestion is, we'll run through the report this evening, but in June, our June meeting, that we put an agenda item that we discuss how we as a committee want to set our budget. It may be different for each authority. Some of you may be CPI plus 3%, CPI plus 1%, but we have a collective conversation about what we want so that we don't get pulled or twisted by each of the other authorities' needs. But I think it's important, if we're going to have a budget, that we as members are going to vote for, that we have some ownership on that. So I would suggest that that be an agenda item in June, and that it be quite a loose agenda item, but we bring it in June. And if you want to come back then with some items to put into that members are more than welcome to have some input on that particular item. And so that's about ownership. Part of the process that I've been learning on this authority, as a portfolio holder, I now have monthly meetings and briefings from their senior officers and senior management team. And they're very helpful in me getting an overview on what's quite a large and complicated body of works. And what I'm going to ask is that the minutes of those meetings, briefings from here on in, are circulated to members of your authorities who are representatives of this board. Some things, it won't be 100% accurate because there's things that we can't always minute, but we're talking about behind the scenes, as I'm sure members are completely aware of, and they do that in their own authorities. But it's to keep you more of abreast of what's going on behind the scenes, so you don't just get an agenda item with 5-6 days notice. And again, it's much more about ownership and keeping involvement. So with that said, I'll pass over to the senior officers to do their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So again, for anybody that's been on the committee before, they'll know this is a paper that comes every October. And the reason why it comes this time of year is that basically the committee is charged effectively by virtue of the existing agreement to recommend a budget back to the councils by the 30th of November. So that's why it's here tonight. Now, there's a couple of points really I just want to to raise on that. First of all, what is being proposed tonight is a recommendation. For your benefit, Councillor Tomlin, this report talks about approve the contribution request, but in effect, basically assuming that everything goes to plan, then effectively it will come across as the same type of thing, which is a recommendation, and then we will come back to the committee in December with the council's views on the recommendation. So nothing we're saying tonight basically is about setting a budget, it's about proposing a budget. And the budget that's proposed in the report tonight is effectively a standstill budget. So there is no growth items in there, there is no contract inflation, there is literally basically a budget which would just keep the service at the current staffing levels. There's no increase in supplies and services or anything like that. Basically, it would just be to maintain the current staffing levels. Now, the reason why there has been a hike is effectively for the issues that I spoke about on the last item. So there was effectively some residual costs. There was some residual costs basically that arose from this year. So the cost of the national insurance rise basically across the service, I think was about £90,000. So that has effectively had to carry forward into this year, even though we're having to manage it in year this year. Sorry, carry forward into next year. And I think the cost of the higher than expected salary rise basically was around about 35, and that also basically, although being managed in year this year, will carry forward into the base budget next year if it's affordable. What we are doing basically is, as I say, basically in terms of the revenue budget, so the contributions that are proposed are those on 514 of this report, and they represent, I think, now an increase of about 6% on the base budget. Off the top of my head, it has come down as we've done other adjustments. So that effectively is the base budget. The splits are made out for your benefit, Councillor Tomlin. So the split that we talk about there at 5.5 is effectively a split on the environmental health element of the budget. The trading standards element of the budget and the bits that we currently share across the three authorities are split three ways. Basically, and perhaps what I need to do is I will make that clearer in the report that comes back in December, Councillor McCann.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
So that's split three ways, and obviously that will also come through anyway as we develop the agreement. So just moving on basically to other elements of the budget, I think I've talked in there about the fact that we do get a number of grant funding streams, and these include all sorts of things from public health. And just to say to colleagues in Bracknell, the last paper was heavy on public health work in West Berkshire, where we have an ongoing funding stream. But we have had discussions with public health colleagues in Bracknell who are very keen to move some of this work into the Bracknell realm, and obviously we'll continue to have those conversations with our colleagues at Wokingham as well. So and then other areas basically where we do get some support is around things like intelligence, investigation, legal costs. I mean, for example, the trial that I've just mentioned, you know, that those are the type of things where we do apply for some support basically to fund those things. So so the budget is quite complicated. I mean, I probably think, well, he would say that, but it is. Because there is stuff that's in scope, there is grant funded cost centres, there's lots of, I mean, the thing about grants is they always come with reporting requirements, and then obviously there's this kind of cross-charging, basically, and everything else. But by and large, basically, it's been a very, very difficult this year, but depending on what's approved for next year, we'll be in good shape. Now, if ultimately, basically, the councils decide after tonight, as we go away and have those more detailed discussions, that this is not affordable, the increases are not affordable, or the proposed budgets are not affordable, then we will need to have a discussion about, for example, you know, some of the vacancies and things like that, basically, and have a look basically where the service might need to be trimmed. But the budget that's proposed tonight is the budget for a standstill in delivery. And as I've already said, basically there are pressures. So what's included in there basically is the expected cost of living rise for next year. So we're expecting that to be, at the moment, we've budgeted for 3.5%, but we don't know, but we're assuming basically 3.5%. Obviously, with anything like that, there are knock-on effects to NI and to basically pension contributions. There is the carry forward. There is the carry forward liabilities from this year that I've already mentioned. And then basically in terms of developing the fees and charges, which I'll come on to now, we have reworked the support service recharges. So what we've done is, so the last time the support service recharges were looked at was a few years back, basically, because obviously they only form about 10% of the base for the budget from which the charges are built. But we did have a look at that, and there's been an increase. Basically, we've increased those recharges by about 30%, and that has now been factored into the hourly rate. So moving on to fees and charges, that gives us now basically an hourly rate of £74, which is an increase of £5 an hour. Basically, and this amounts to an inflationary increase of 7.2% in the cost base for the service. Sorry, it's in the cost base for the fees and charges. And 518 talks about some of those things that are included in there. But it does absolutely, as far as we can see, basically include absolutely everything. So it includes the charges that basically are nominally put against the service, things like finance, HR, legal, and everything else. So so effectively, the proposed fees and charges are Appendix 1, based on that 7.2%. Some of those. So the next stage for those fees and charges will be to go to the licensing committees. So obviously that won't apply to Wokingham Council or Tomlin, but they will go to the licensing committees, West Berkshire and at Bracknell in the next 4 weeks, something of that order, basically for consideration. And depending on the views of the licensing committees, then some of those fees we are statutorily required to consult on. We will go out to statutory requirement, come back to the licensing committees with the outcomes of the statutory requirements, and then depending on that, the licensing committees will make a recommendation on the whole fees and charges based to full council. But ultimately, basically, each council is sovereign in setting its own fees and charges, and that will be set at full council in the normal budget cycle, February, March, whenever your meetings are next year. So really, I think that is that summarises the report. Just to say that basically there are probably two things worth mentioning is there's been a significant increase in the charges for animal establishment inspections. So currently they're carried out for us by the City of London Animal Health Unit. So I know it sounds a bit strange, but the City of London do animal health for the whole of Greater London. So they cover Heathrow and every single borough in London. It's just a traditional thing. They currently carry out our inspections. Obviously, we're able to recruit to the animal welfare officer role that we just advertised. The plan is to bring all of that in-house, basically. So that's the plan there. But at the moment, because you need to have a specific qualifications to carry out those inspections, we haven't got anybody because the person that we did have, basically, unfortunately, we lost. Left the service, so we are looking to recruit to that post, and they will do some of those inspections. They will do most of those inspections, and then some of the fees, basically. So what we're proposing at the moment is we don't know the City of London fees at this stage because they haven't set their fees. What we're saying is that our fees for animal establishments are those set out in Appendix A, and then basically we will recharge the inspections at cost, basically. So there will be nothing added to that. We'll just recharge it at cost once they're known.
Chairman, sorry, just
Yes.
why would we do that at cost? Surely we would add time and effort on behalf of our officers.
So that's included basically. So if you can see, basically, there are a number of hours included in the application fee and also in the grant fee. So effectively, when I say at cost, what I mean is that the costs of collecting it are included in the fees that we've already charged. There are other basically types of establishments where we also do have to do some recharges. So some of the animal establishments and things like zoos, we do have 2 or 3 premises with zoo licenses. We also have to have specialist vets as well come in and carry out inspections. So, for example, with the zoo license premises, we have to use vets that are nominated by the Animal Plant Health Agency, who are specialists in exotic animals. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can see maybe there are.
Do we have any questions, members?
Given that the 2 major members of the PPP will be making their decisions about their budgets and stuff like that over the next few months, and the sort of, it'll come back in December. What about after there are potential changes to membership? What does that do to the people that haven't yet made their decisions?
So funny enough, actually, the licensing obviously is something that will be staying with Wokingham in terms of the fee setting. So there's not going to be an issue there. We will know the City of London proposed fees by the time I come back in December. I can update the committee on that. So for the animal establishments, what I can say is that basically we don't want the fees to get wildly out of line. So basically, in fact, we had a discussion with colleagues from Wokingham this morning about fees and charges and everything else, because the one thing people immediately do is not to say that different authorities don't have different cost bases, basically, but the one thing that people immediately do is to tell you what the fees are of all the authorities around you. Now, I would say that our fees basically are in the range of the authorities around us. But we are bound by rules and everything else about how they're set. The other thing is that basically, if you take, for example, taxis and things like that, there are some authorities that have set themselves up, as you'll know, Councillor Allen, to provide this service on a much wider level than a local authority level. And what we really want basically is, whilst we want to recover all of our money, and I'm confident that we're doing that, we do want people to stay licensed locally. I think for local control and everything else, basically, then obviously for a lot of things they can't do that. But the biggest thing, and you mentioned it earlier on, Councillor Allen, the biggest thing are these statutory fees. We would be in a completely different place if the statutory fees were where they should be, which is 70% higher than they are now.
Just following up on that, I know that years ago we aligned, when we had 3 authorities as full members, we aligned all our fees. Do we know whether they are still aligned across the 3 authorities?
One of the issues that we have is that we go a little earlier in the cycle than everybody else because we have to bring the report through to the November meeting. But what we do is benchmarking. So we have looked at the fees from last year, and when our neighbours in Reading, Slough, Windsor and Maidenhead, Swindon and the Vale, when they sort of produce their fees, we do look at them again, because this is still part of the consultation phase. So if there was something that was wildly out of kilter, we did have a discussion across all the authorities about the fees, for example, around sexual establishment venues. So some of the authorities are a lot lower than ours. Well, one of the authorities is a lot lower, but the rest of the Berkshire authorities were all very similar.
But it doesn't really matter what our fees are for that, because we haven't got any. So, but yeah, it is something that we do, and actually we have shared our proposals, for example, with colleagues at Wokingham already. And in fact, well, they're already published, so they're in the public domain.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very detailed. Are there any other questions from members before we move forward? Thank you. Is there any other officer input needed on this one, or are we quite happy to go? At this point, we have, I think, to note 2.1, and then we have a series of votes. Now, with members' approval, we can either vote individually, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, or we can vote collectively. What would members prefer?
I was going to say do the lot.
Thank you. Then I would propose from the chair that we do so. Would I need a seconder to do that? And
Yes, Chair. Councillor Jeffreys to second.
thank you very much. And at that point, I'll
Indeed. So, members, the recommendations before you, as Chairman has said, 2.1 is to note really. So from 2.2, the committee is asked to recommend to partner councils the contributions set out in column 3 of the table from the basis of the 26-27 net revenue budget contributions. Also to recommend to partner councils the fees and charges that are in Appendix A, to approve the contribution request from Woking Borough Council to be set out within the table at paragraph 5.24, to agree the policy position in relation to monies received under the Asset Recovery Incentivisation Scheme, approved this meeting a year ago, is to remain the policy to be applied to spend allocation of any monies that are received under the scheme. And finally, at the December meeting of this committee, members will receive an update report on the outcome of deliberations on the proposed net revenue budget and proposed fees and charges. So members in favour of those to approve those recommendations, please show. Thank you. That is then unanimous. Thank you.
thank you, members, for your participation in that one. Moving on to item number 9. Who's going to present this one?
That's me, thank you. So I'm Rosalind Gator. I'm the strategic manager that covers environmental health housing. And can I also introduce you to Deborah Vincent? She's joined us this evening. She's joined PPP as the Principal Environmental Health Officer for Housing. Very welcome addition to PPP. So basically, the environmental health housing policy, this we renew and review every 3 years. It basically sets the scene for the work that the environmental health housing team carry out, the priorities that they have, and what's coming in the way of in the near future for the team also. Just a couple of areas that the team carry out. So the housing team, they deal with housing in poor repair and condition, and where tenants are experiencing harm and health hazards as a result of their home. We do this using the HHSRS, that's the Housing Health and Safety Rating Scheme. There's 29 hazards that officers look for and risk rate in properties, and that determines what action are taken. So of the 29 hazards, there's things like electrical safety, falls from heights, falls on the same level, there's hygiene, there's damp and mold, excess cold, excess heat, asbestos, overcrowding, fire, structural and collapse. There's a number of areas that the officers will look at whenever we get calls from tenants. We also in the team deal with licensing of houses of multiple occupation. That's where 5 or more tenants of 2 different families essentially are living. Again, this is to cover safety and well-being. We have over 200 HMOs in the 2 areas that we cover. That involves an inspection of the HMO on a renewal basis every 5 years. We're also involved with conversion properties. So that's commercial premises that are converted into residential properties. And those would look at issues such as heating and ventilation, as some of the commercial buildings aren't set up to be residential in the first place. So we sometimes have issues with excess heat. We also work with the fire services and building control on those type of buildings to look at fire compartmentalisation and structural issues. In terms of tall buildings, we are involved with the nationwide programme at the minute looking at tall buildings and cladding. So it's the cladding safety scheme. We're now working with the fire authorities and building control to review the buildings that are 11 to 18 metres, having completed the 18-metre plus buildings. The team license caravan sites. So this is for site health and safety rather than in the individual units. We have up on 25 sites across the two areas. Each of those get a full annual inspection by officers, as well as we're dealing with service requests that come in about site safety. One of the main issues, I suppose, that we would deal with, and it's coming into that time now, into the colder months, is damp and mould. Again, we expect the calls to start to go up, to rise with the number of damp and mould and cold calls we get from tenants. And we're working at the minute to ensure that the officers have all the up-to-date information about how to deal with these, how to identify what type of damp it is, because we need to identify what type of damp it is to know how to rectify it. This year we've also moved a senior trading standards officer into the team to work more closely together with trading standards and housing issues. For example, MEES, which is the minimum energy efficiency standards, and try to coordinate our efforts in that. So that just gives you a flavour of the work of the team. And there's more information in the environmental health housing policy. And again, basically it's talking about what the team does, what the priorities are going forward, and what's coming up in the near future for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Sean.
Can I just say that, thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Rosalind. So just to say that what we have tried to do, this is for the first time, is to pull all things housing together into the same policy. So when we talk about the trading standards elements of it, so Rosalind's mentioned one there, but there's a whole other range around letting agents, deposits, all of that kind of stuff. So we've moved somebody from trading standards into the team to lead on that element, to give us a comprehensive approach to dealing with the whole issue around the rented sector, and in readiness for the Renters' Rights Bill, which should become law in the autumn, basically with the first elements being those that relate to evictions.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any questions, members, at this point? No, okay. Then could I bring members' attentions to 2.1, which again is to note, and I'll hand over to the officers for members to approve the direction. I take it if members are happy to do that.
Yes, so just to seek a proposer to do so.
I would propose that I have a second, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Jeffreys to second.
Okay. So yeah, as the Chairman said, the vote is to approve the direction the service is taking in environmental health sector housing. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Unanimous decision. Thank you.
Thank you, members, and thank the officers for drafting such a clear report. Thank you. At this point, I think we have concluded all the business for this evening. I again thank members and officers both here and at wherever they're joining us online. Remind members that next meeting will be December 8th, and that will be at Bracknell Forest. Now, this may seem a slightly quirky question. Are we going to visit Wokingham?
So what we'll do is at the next meeting, I propose that we come up with a new cycle of meetings, and also I think we'll also need to look at the cycle of the way that the chair, vice chair rotates. So we'll come forward with a report proposing some options by then, because by that stage we'll also basically have got through the changes to the relevant constitutional changes to cover everything off that we'll need to go through anyway at the next meeting.
Thank you. I know Wokingham's a bit of Wokingham's process. I don't know how convoluted Bracknell's process is about changing the way they do things, but in this authority, It can be quite convoluted, to say the least. So hopefully we can get through that process pretty quickly. What do you suspect it will need an amendment to our constitution, or do you think it will go under the radar? An amendment?
So there is so effectively, because we're the host, and I think currently the agreement says that the standing orders effectively, although it's a committee of all three councils, that the standing orders of West Berkshire as host apply. We will just need to amend those standing orders to reflect that our colleagues at Wokingham are back on the committee, and then basically the new agreement itself will talk about the fact that the chair and vice chair rotate. So the decision will need to be made on where do we want that to rotate from next year. Basically, how do we want that to rotate? And then I think we'll just come forward with a proposal to move the committee meetings around the three authorities as well, and bring that forward next meeting at Bracknell. So the following meeting after that, which I believe is March. I mean, it may well be that could be the first one at Shoot End.
We look forward to that.
We'd be happy to have you.
At that point, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening and your inputs.